The Word is proud media partner of Latitude Festival. For more information and to purchase tickets, go to www.latitudefestival.co.uk.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
No, people are never bloody happy, are they?
Yeah.
So, did you see the Queen documentaries? When
No.
I went out.
No, I
These
didn't.
were astonishing.
Partner on BBC 4.
BBC Four ran, Queen, obviously. If you grow up in the sort of post-punk world, Queen are the enemy, aren't they?
Kind
They're
of, yeah.
like, this is big, bloated, horrible, rubbish music.
Yeah.
Ugly, and it's got no cool value.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'd hated them because
Right.
I was supposed to hate them.
Yeah.
You finally watch the thing, you realise what a fantastic band they really were, and how, every one of all four members wrote a #1 hit single, adventurous beyond belief. I feel ashamed of my belief about that Queen were rubbish.
Yeah.
The thing I find out about them, reading there was a Sparks biography
Yes.
released last year, the year before, after Kimono My House, and it was before Queen were doing Bohemian Rhapsody. Sparks lost their guitarist, so
Yeah.
the Mails went to speak to Brian May and said, "Will you join Sparks as our touring guitarist?" And he went, "I don't think so." And then they released Bohemian Rhapsody.
You have to say that Bohemian Rhapsody is a well, whatever you think of them, it's a remarkable record, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a kind of groundbreakingly strange record, isn't it? I know, obviously, but because you know it so well, it kind of like you forget how incredibly unusual it was. And imagine if someone made that record nowadays, you'd think, well, that's not
wouldn't be
going to
allowed
get on
to.
the radio.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be allowed
They
to.
would be
Exactly.
prevented to.
They
The
wouldn't be allowed
studio's
to.
still relatively primitive then, but they
Yeah.
worked on 24 tracks at that stage.
Yeah.
It's an incredible record.
And yet, when you hear Bohemian Rhapsody, the first thing you think is, oh, it's Queen, they're rubbish. Oh, I'm sick of this. Oh, I hate Ben Elton.
Yeah.
Oh, that stupid musical. And you can't get past all that stuff, and then...
No.
Or you
Well,
think of Bill and Ted.
Anything is a victim
Yes.
of its own success, isn't it? As soon as it's kind of like, it kind of gets to a certain level, it becomes omnipresent, doesn't it?
Well, I finished watching these documentaries and immediately ran off and downloaded Seven Seas of Rye. I thought, this is such a fantastic record.
It was quite an honest documentary as well, because that was produced by Globe Productions, which is through Universal, and obviously Universal have got all the Queen catalogue now, so it was obviously done by Universal to push albums, but they were quite open and honest about the things that went wrong and kind of where they lost direction.
You wonder how many new albums or more albums Queen need to sell, don't you? Surely everybody's got every single one that possibly.
Well, the thing that David Joseph from Universal said when they got the Queen catalogue from AMI, he said that Queen have kind of been positioned as this greatest hits. And I think that Greatest Hits 1 and 2 is like the second biggest selling album in UK history or something ridiculous like that. But he said we want to reposition them as an albums act and reissue the albums the same way they did when they got the Stones catalogue as well.
God.
So I think they're going to probably go and give those bells and whistles releases for the Works and Day at the Races and Out of the Opera and all of that.
Good Lord. Let's stop talking about Queen. This is the Word Podcast. I'm Andrew Harrison. Welcome to the podcast. And with us we have the amazing special guest, Brett Anderson of the reformed Suede.
Well, what a lovely introduction. Thank you.
And also the... equally amazing special guest, Eamon Ford.
The mechanically reclaimed.
of the Word magazine. And also, time to fess up, Eamon, you were a member of the Suede Army, were you not?
I very much was, yes.
And still are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll probably embarrass myself by telling you about the time I met you in Cambridge in 1993.
There's no probably about it. Go on.
No, I've written about this.
It's you.
Yes, it was me.
Let's not talk about that on air, eh?
I was going out with a girl who was working in Cambridge, and my only 2 trips over to visit her coincided with the Mannix playing the Junction and Suede playing the Junction, and it was the day after Animal Nitrate went to number 7. And I was in the middle of Cambridge, and you were all just walking through the street, and I thought this was... So I ran up in a panic and went, I think you're brilliant. And you went, wow, great, thanks. Have you got a ticket for the show? And I went, yeah. And they said, oh, we could have left your name on the door. And I almost fell over with the glamour of the music business.
There you go. You made a young lad very happy there, Brett.
That's lovely, isn't it?
That's
And I told everybody when I came back at university that I'd met Suede on the street, and they went, you didn't, you huge fucking liar.
That's why autographs exist, you see. That's why people write the names on grubby bus tickets and stuff.
It's
proof.
I'm going to have to get a picture with you afterwards then to
Yeah.
prove them all wrong.
You can twit pick it.
20 years later,
Yeah. Facebook it.
And then Web Fraser will
See?
Photoshop Cambridge in 1992 into the
I could do that,
background.
yeah.
Yes. So, You're looking very well, Brett.
Well, thank you very much.
You know, the Reformation of Suede is clearly agreeing with you.
It is, yes. I'm very much enjoying it. It's, you know, but that's the way to approach it. I think you have to kind of really grasp it and enjoy it, and you know, yeah, it's been great.
What's been the best bit so far?
What's been the best bit? The gig we did at the Albert Hall last year was pretty special, actually. That was pretty special when we didn't really know what the reaction was going to be, and it was a really special night. It was probably my favourite gig we've ever done.
Yeah,
there was that insane standing ovation as
yes.
well. I think after Metal Mickey, and
right.
It just went on and on and on.
It was lovely, and it's beautiful. It was just a lovely night. You know, we I suppose we just realised that there was a lot of people that really loved what we did, and it's a real pleasure.
You don't expect actual legendary gigs to be taking place in the present time, do you? You tend to think they all happened in 1972.
Well, exactly.
You're not making them anymore.
You know, I think it's a lovely thing that when people say, well, what's your favourite moment ever in the band, that's what I turn around and say, that moment last year. It wasn't something that happened in 1992. It wasn't something that happened in 1995. It was something that happened very recently. And I think that's a lovely thing.
What was your previous favourite moment then?
God, you know,
top 10 favourite moments.
Yeah, there've been lots of amazing things. You know, the whole period when Suede first happened in '92 and around the time of Metal Mickey, and when it sort of suddenly started to go a bit crazy. That was amazing. All that time when, you know, I'd go on stage and then, you know, end the gig with, you know, half my clothes missing because the crowd would just go mad. Yeah. And that was really
Eamon
exciting.
actually pulling bits of your shirt off.
Yeah, that was the junction in.
It was, yeah, and the limelight in Belfast actually, where another boring fact, where in the middle of the drowners, I think Bernard's guitar packed up, and
I remember the moment.
And you'd in the middle of Slow Down, and then you did a kind of slow down version of Slow Down, and then the guitar kicked back in, but it was wall to wall, and there was little mirrors opposite the stage, and the sweat was running down. It was the most insane gig. I think that was the day before the album came out, or the week of the album release.
And you were there?
I was there.
Because that was a really special night, actually. I remember that moment. It was a real magical moment, wasn't it? And then I think his lead was broken or something like that, and it was kind of like, and then it suddenly kicked back in for the next verse, or something like that.
Well, you did this kind of long, drawn-out, slow down bit, while he figured out what had gone wrong.
And everyone sang along, and it was quite a nice, spontaneous moment.
I think Fraser's going to dub the music for our tune underneath this little bit here, because it's a beautiful, romantic little reunion here.
It was my only two memories.
Oh, right, you can't remember anything else at all about anything, can you?
Mine too, as well, so that's lucky.
And you've just done the first 3 albums in order at Brixton Academy.
Yeah.
A fairly draining process of remembering stuff, I should imagine.
Yeah,
that's like, what, 60-odd, 40-odd songs?
A lot
of
homework, a lot of homework.
How did it go? How did you feel about it?
I loved it. I mean, I was a bit I had a few trepidations about it, because it's a very different experience playing an album to playing just a normal gig. I think people come along with different expectations. They kind of come along with a much more, you know, they're much more spectators in a way. But the audience were amazing, and I loved it. It was really rewarding, actually. Yeah, it was quite a challenge, but a very rewarding challenge. Yeah.
Certainly, a large part of the fact that the large part of what I enjoyed about it was knowing what's coming next. This is coming up next.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like when you're rewatching a favourite movie and you're waiting for a fantastic bit that you love.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Eamon sending twit pics everywhere, going, "The next one is this. The next one is this."
But that's the thing about a good record or a good film or something. It doesn't matter how many times you listen to it. The knowledge of what's coming next is part of the buzz of it, isn't it? You know, it doesn't. Yeah. You know, I sometimes find myself watching the same film over and over again. It doesn't matter that I know the plot. It's not the surprise. It's the kind of like the anticipation that's the kick. Well,
the surprise was in the encore songs as well.
Yeah.
Because there's some kind of surprise in things like Young Man and Europe's Our Playground.
Yeah.
And Stay Together as well.
Yes.
Well, see, that's a very vexed point with me, because I missed the Dogman Star Night, so I missed Stay Together, which is the whole... Suede fan listeners will know that this is the Holy Grail.
It was only the short version.
We play it literally once every 7 years, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
tough luck.
Come back in 2018. Yeah, all right, fair enough. Well, as Eamon said, though, it is only the short version, so we need the one with the big rap and the horns and everything else.
Yeah, we'll do that one.
The endless one.
Yes, another time,
Yeah. Did you notice people coming to see the Reunited Suede shows, perhaps that didn't come before? Different types of people?
Well, definitely people that probably weren't there, in the 90s. Quite a lot of young folk there, which was nice. Young folk.
All the youngsters.
Sound like someone from, some old miner. lots of young kids, which is great. I guess lots of people sort of like have heard about the band and are curious and heard some of our music and, didn't get to see us at the time and have come along, and yeah, it's been fantastic. It hasn't been as kind of kind of, what's the word, retro an experience as I'd feared that it possibly could be. When you kind of reform a band, is it just all about people remembering what they were doing when they were students in 1994 and stuff like this? And it hasn't felt like that. It's actually felt very contemporary. And I think that the fact that we go on stage and we don't quite know whether this is going to be our last gig or not, and I like that sense that there's a sense of transience about it. There's a sense of and that makes you approach it with a real energy, I think.
Yeah, this might only happen once.
Yeah, and genuinely, obviously, we have a couple of shows booked now, but after this summer, we might decide to do other things again, and that keeps it exciting for me. That our diaries aren't packed with all these dates for the next few years. That's really exciting.
What was the reaction like when you did the Dublin show? Because was it in the Olympia?
Yeah.
You did the 3... No, it was the week after. Or 2
That's
weeks
right,
after,
yeah, a couple of days after, yeah.
Because, in a way, if you're a Suede fan, probably because of Love and Poison, Brixton Academy was kind of the spiritual home of Suede. It was kind of like Suede's Woodstock, in a way.
Yeah.
So what was the reaction like in Dublin? Because Suede were invariably kind of seen as a London band. Because a lot of the songs were about London and about misfits in London. How did the reaction work in Dublin?
It wasn't as crazy as the Brixton night sort of thing, but it was great, and it was just almost like a scaled down version of it, really. It was at the Olympia, which is a beautiful old theatre.
Lovely venue.
So it's just a kind of like, I suppose it was like, we kind of enjoyed it a lot because it was a lot less pressure. The whole kind of experience of playing in London. Sometimes London crowds can be tough, and it's you don't know quite which way it's going to fall. But it's amazing. Loved it. Yeah.
One of the things about these gigs is not just the Teenage Cancer Trust gig at the Albert Hall, but also the kind of the 3 albums and the OT things. They've all been quite fan-led, haven't they? They've all been quite for your core audience.
Yeah,
and you're going to be doing festivals this summer, aren't you?
Yeah.
Have you sort of felt the need to kind of get Suede back out in front of the general public?
Yeah,
passing
definitely.
Trade, get the old sandwich board on, kind of thing.
I think it's important. You can't just be kind of like preaching to the choir all the time. I think you've got to test yourself against people that aren't your core audience. I think it's really important. And that, obviously you change the set, and when we play festivals, you have to play songs that people know a bit better. You haven't got that luxury of kind of like just trying out B-sides and stuff like that. But it's just a different discipline.
It's a funny state of affairs, isn't it? Because when you first arrived, you were so incredibly out of step with everything. Everybody was hairy, everybody was grungy, and everybody had gigantic shorts on and long Ned's Atomic Dustbin long-sleeve T-shirts
and dreadlocks and
dreadlocks.
Like that. Yeah.
And you've
It's a
arrived.
terrible time to be a student as well, because that's what student fashion was.
I know. I can't picture you in Ned's Atomic Dustbin shirt and long dreads.
I didn't like that.
Quite right too. Well, you've come back now, and Suede are equally out of step. You look like a unique thing.
Right.
You look like a we're sort of in a situation now where going to see bands is no longer something that the weirdos and the fringe types go and do. Everybody goes to see bands.
Yeah.
And lots of the bands just seem to be kind of the same. They've all blanded out into that's what a rock band looks like. You guys turn up, you look very, very different. You sound very, very different.
Yeah.
It's 1992 all over again, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe, but I also think that strangely enough, there's quite a lot of parallels with Suede these days. There's bands that have kind of come along since sort of Suede split up. People like the Killers and people like Interpol and stuff like that. They're definitely kind of like there's a thread there. So I feel as though we Suede kind of like, whether we passed on a flame or planted a seed or whatever, I don't know what happened, sort of thing, but I do feel as though there's a thread between what we did and what's kind of like the bands that kind of came after us.
What about the climate of today and new acts coming through? Because there was the infamous Melody Maker cover from '92 before you'd released a note and nobody outside of London had really heard it, which was Best New Band in Britain.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hype and there's a lot of expectation around that. If that happened today, are we a bit too known and is everything a bit too hyper-mediated that if a band was proclaimed the best new band in Britain, everybody would have laughed them out of the room? Left, right and centre. They wouldn't have had the chance to kind of make it to the next stage. The cynicism would perhaps have been a bit too much.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of debatable whether it kind of worked for Suede anyway. I think it worked short term for the band, but I think that sort of like hyper kind of like profile that we had early on was kind of in the long run quite damaging for us. Actually, I sort of regret that we weren't allowed to grow a little bit more. That we weren't just allowed to sort of like it wasn't allowed to happen a bit more organically. But what can you do? A lot of people were very excited about the music we were making, so it's just a reaction to it, sort of thing. But I think you put off just as many people as you attract with that kind of thing, you know.
You've just been ferreting through a massive Suede archive for some of the most exhaustive reissues we've seen, because you're putting out every one of the albums with a full suite of extra stuff, aren't you?
Yeah.
When you're sort of looking back on these times, did you find things that maybe jogged memories, and from the first Suede album, Dogman Star, and coming up and stuff like that? Things that you thought, I don't remember this happening, or things that maybe opened doors and reminded you of things you'd forgotten?
Yeah, loads of things. I mean, there's, me and Bernard were sitting in the studio mastering the stuff, and he brought this big box of dusty old cassettes along. And, we were playing stuff that I hadn't heard for 20 years, demos that we didn't end up using and stuff like this. He brought this lovely, which ended up on the thing, this old demo of me and Justine singing a song called Just a Girl. And, it takes you back in time, it really does. It's kind of like part of your personal history as well as being part of kind of like your own musical thing as well, sort of thing. It's kind of like, it has two dimensions for me. It's a kind of like a public thing, but also a kind of private thing. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And that's the whole... What I wanted to do with the reissues, I didn't want it to be a kind of a record company release. I wanted it to have a sense that the band were very, very involved in it, and lots of all of the photographs and all of the stuff that the visual, all the video stuff. That's my friend's camcorder footage, half of it. That I went round to his house and said, "Have you got any?" Kind of went through his old cassettes and. Weeded out the ones of him and his girlfriend, and and found Suede from Paris in 1994, and that's what ended up on the thing. So I wanted to have a real sense that the band were involved in it rather than some big faceless record company.
And there's a brilliant clip that you were talking about of Brett and Bernard talking away about something or other, and Bernard goes, "Right, that's it, I'm off."
It's in the Dogman Star.
Yes.
And you make some joke and he goes, "Right, I'm storming off again."
That's very good, yeah. Well, luckily we've got the space from it now that we can make jokes about it. We can laugh about it now.
But at the time it was terrible. Yeah. So, I mean, you've been able to do something that most bands... In fact, I can't think of any band that's really done this. Usually everybody has to be dead before something gets anthologised in this degree of detail. You get to anthologise yourselves. You get to write your own history.
Right, isn't it? Best of all worlds, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Beatles anthology was what? 15, 20 years after they split?
Good time. It was mid-90s that came out, I think.
And do you feel that by building this kind of reservoir of, this archive, it sort of gives you a bit of a platform to do new things in the future?
I do. I think it's a really important part of just one's journey as an artist, without wanting to sound too pompous. I think you should spend some time looking back, because I think you need to sort of learn from your history a little bit, and then therefore you can kind of go forward. I think it's a very important part of it. If I spent my whole life just going through sort of like tapes from 1994, I'd think there was something wrong. But I kind of like. I'm currently sort of releasing new records as a solo artist, so I feel as though there's I have a sort of Janus-like kind of sort of simultaneous look into the past and into the future, which is nice.
Tell us a bit about this solo record then, Black Rainbow.
Yes, that's
and
right.
It's I was listening to it this morning. It's good stuff, and it sort of is a bit Suede, and it isn't. Do you find yourself thinking, I have to diversify and make sure this is clearly distinguishable from Suede?
Not really. The fact that it isn't Suede is enough of a kind of distance from me, and the way that I made Black Rainbows was very specific. I got together with three other musicians, and we literally just jammed for 3 days, and we kind of just did a load of improvised stuff, and then we took all the tapes away, cut all the songs up, re-edited them, and then I turned them into songs. I imposed song structures on them. So it's a very, very different way of working. With all the Suede albums, it's been a lot of pre-production had been in the demos, writing the songs, crafting the songs, changing the odd chord here and there. There's none of that. It was all very spontaneous. So I knew it was going to sound different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just sort of like I kind of just let it happen. I think that when I've gone off the rails before in the past, it's been because I've become too self-conscious of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And
I think it's important just to be instinctive sometimes, and that's how I made this record.
But it's still the kind of thing that if you like Suede, you will like it because it's got your very distinctive voice, and it's it's not like it's a reggae record or a polka record.
No.
It's within the idiom of what you do.
It's a rock record, it's an alternative rock record, and I'm hugely proud of it. And for me, it's I'm kind of writing. I'm writing about the complexities of relationships again. For a while I sort of wanted to almost use lyrics as just sort of like blank kind of pivots for the music to sit around.
Yeah.
And now I kind of like, I suppose I want the lyrics to sort of like lead the songs again. So I suppose in that sense it reflects Suede. I think the kind of like people that liked the early lyrics in Suede songs will kind of like will respond to this in a similar way.
If Suede do a massive tour, will you support yourself with your own band, or will that knacker you?
Or would you want the outline?
You could buy onto your own
question.
tour.
It really depends, doesn't it? Yeah. No.
All right, fair enough. It's doable, though. It could be done. One of the things there's a piece I'm writing for the next issue about Suede, which we've just been talking about this morning, and one of the things that came up was Brett was very keen to point out how good Richard Oakes is and how underrated he is, and how he's he's been in Suede far longer than than Bernard Butler, and he's an underrated musical talent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's just hugely talented person. He's one of these sort of scarily talented people that almost hasn't really got any limits to his talent. You have to sort of point him in the right direction sometimes,
Yeah. And he joined the band at 17, when most people haven't left school, and was immediately dumped straight onto a tour promoting an album he didn't play on.
Yeah.
And the show began with a song that he'd written.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is pretty deep end, isn't it?
Yeah, we really shoved him into the deep end with all his clothes on. Yeah, poor chap.
And you had locked him in a room and made him write a song.
We did, right? Yeah. We were on tour in Germany, and we needed a B-side for New Generation because we didn't have any extra songs left over from the Dogman Star session, and we locked him in his hotel room and told him he couldn't come out until he'd written a hit.
That's like Andrew Lou Goldham when he made Mick and Keith.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So, he locked them in the flat and said, "Write a hit." And I think it was Sullivan and I think.
Yeah.
Was it? It was whatever the first Jagger Richards single was.
Yeah.
He forced them almost at gunpoint.
It was a homage to Lou Goldman. Yeah.
God. What do they all do when they're not in Suede?
What the Suede?
What does everybody else do? You've just made a solo album, and you've got an ongoing solo career.
People lounge around in like dungarees and be really badly dressed.
Exactly. Yeah. They just sort of wear tracky bottoms and
Well, Matt's got his projects on the internet, hasn't he?
Yeah, Matt's kind of sort of editing an internet magazine called Le Cool. Mm-hmm. Simon's living in Thailand, which sounds like a full-time job.
Yes.
And he's in a band called Goo. Mm-hmm. Richard's in a band called Art Magic.
Art Magic, and they've got something coming out very shortly, haven't they?
That's right. And Neil has been kind of just, being a professional musician, doing soundtracks and, doing session work and stuff like that. So everyone's been busy.
So Simon living in Thailand, that's got to make rehearsals tricky.
It does.
Does he ever say, "Let's do it at my place"?
Exactly, yeah. He hasn't invited us yet, but...
Oh, right.
You could do it over Skype.
We do it often. We have actually had Skype meetings. It's like in Futurama when they have the heads of the cryogenically preserved heads.
Richard Nixon's head.
There's a kind of TV and a computer in the corner with Simon's head on it. And we're
Do you
all
put
kind
a
of
tea
sitting.
towel over him when you don't want to hear what
we
he's
kind of
saying?
we kind of arrange kind of things around the screen to make it look like he's got a comedy body.
Well, a very little
hat on the
tiny
top
body.
of the screen, that sort of thing. But you can't see.
Yeah.
But from his point of view, he's often saying it's so hot here. I'm actually sitting in the nude, but I'm obviously not going to show you. He's got his kind of so.
This is the kind of this is the kind of thing that gets American senators sacked from their positions.
Is it?
Sending pictures through the internet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure if Suede fans can hack into the web feed, they'll get everything they could possibly wish to see. Simon on a futon.
We should broadcast it, shouldn't we? Yeah.
That's what I call DVD extras.
That's what I call a great meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Volume 4.
You're listening to the Word Podcast. It's not supposed to be professional.
And when we last spoke, you said there might be a new Suede record and there might be new things happening.
Yeah.
What's the latest state of play?
The latest state of play is that we're just writing. We're just kind of carrying on with it. It's been slow because we've been festivaling and stuff like that. But it feels good. I'm kind of confident that we'll release a new record. Yeah.
There you go.
I won't release it unless it's amazing, but yeah, I'm confident it'll be great.
And you're going to be playing Latitude.
Yep.
The word-sponsored Latitude,
Yep.
which we have to say there.
Right. Word-sponsored Latitude. Yeah. Can't wait.
What can we expect?
What can we expect? We can expect a Suede show. You know, it's for me, it's live music. It's never about the gimmicks. It's just about getting up there and giving everything. And you know, it's our only UK festival, and it's really important for us that it's amazing. So you know, it's going to be a special night for us. Yeah.
What other festivals are you doing? You're doing them around Europe.
Doing loads. I was in Denmark 2 days ago doing a festival called Northside, playing with Interpol and Vaccines and people like that, and who were great. And before that, we were doing one called SOS in Spain. So lots around Europe, and then we're going to Asia. So we're doing a lot of touring this summer. Yeah.
It's really changed, hasn't it, the whole festival world? Because it used to be you'd have your own tour, and you might do one festival or two festivals in the summer.
Yeah.
And now you tour the festivals.
Yeah.
And you might do your own tour on the side in the autumn, but the kind of game has migrated so much.
It has. I mean, festivals have become huge, while you know, revenue from music sales has shrunk. So, you know, bands need to make money. It's a business, so you have to kind of like end up touring the festivals. Yeah.
Does it feel different to do that than to do, you know, the festivals the way they used to be? I remember you doing when you headlined Glastonbury, and I think it was 1993.
Yeah.
And this was considered to be the absolute pinnacle of what a band like, you know, like an alternative rock band could get no bigger than
exactly.
And now there is you can get so much bigger. You can do that 5 times across Europe.
Exactly. No, the whole you know, the thing has shifted, hasn't it? You know, mainstream bands are now rock bands, but only in that kind of like in that arena, really. So yeah, it has kind of shifted quite a lot. And you're right, yeah, it did. You know, that was the pinnacle at that time. All we were doing was headlining the second stage. We weren't headlining the main stage in those days.
But it felt like this was as big as a kind of alternative NME select type band could never get any bigger than this.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but then you know, Britpop happened after that, and the whole kind of the mainstream shifted, didn't it? And I think it sort of stayed fairly where it is.
You kind of missed the big wave of Britpop as well, because you were in between Dogman Star and Coming Up.
Yeah.
So when that insane Blur Oasis kind of Punch and Judy show was happening, you were kind of out of the game, not out of the game, but you were away from the charts.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Do you think that probably the serendipity of the timing was good in that you didn't become kind of caught up and become like Menswear or the Blue Tones or those bands that are just now seen as the kind of landfill indie of the Britpop
I didn't
era?
ever really want to become part of that, to be honest. I never felt that Suede was part of it. You know,
but I mean, you would start
we sort of initiated it, and it kind of like, you know, we kick-started it, but I always had a healthy disrespect for it, to be honest. You know, it's always a bit, I don't know, I found it a bit obvious, to be honest. You know, what I was writing about in those early days, I was writing about in quite a critical way about Britain and British life, and you know, those kind of things, and it kind of became I think cartoonised and turned into something else, you know, that I wasn't particularly comfortable with. So, and you know, as soon as we saw it happening around us, we were making Dogman Star, which is the least Britpop record you can possibly imagine in terms of intention anyway.
It was quite a dark kind of epic album as well to release after kind of being known for kind of big hit singles like Nitrate and Metal Mickey and So Young, to then do things like Still Life and The Asphalt World and Black and Blue, things like that. It was very dark, very out of step. There weren't big hit singles. I suppose there was the Wild Ones and maybe We Are the Pigs, but
New Generation. But yeah, there weren't the kind of things like Animal Nitrate on it. There wasn't Metal Mickey. It wasn't that kind of like slightly cheeky sort of like, you know, London kind of thing. It was definitely, we wanted to take it somewhere that was more sort of isolated and European and colder.
It was very like low in that respect then.
Yeah, I suppose so in those terms, you know. But it was a record that, you know, we just wanted to take it to the next level with that record. You know, we'd made the debut album, and then with Dogman Star, we were going to go as far out there as possible. And
do you think it went too far, i.e., that drove Bernard away, or
in those
fell
terms,
apart?
In those terms, yeah, I obviously massively regret that, but I don't think creatively. No, I think it's a beautiful record that somehow manages to hold together, even though it's very, very varied. It's somehow, there's a thread that unites it. And if you compare songs like The Wild Ones to Daddy's Speeding and to New Generation and all. They're very, very different sorts of songs, but somehow it kind of there's a thread that gives it a unity.
Did you kind of go in with that idea that you wanted to do something so different? Because in a way it was an extension of a lot of the stuff that was on the B-sides, like To the Birds or He's Dead or The Pigs Don't Fly, and it was taking the lead from the stuff that wasn't the singles that perhaps people didn't necessarily know Suede for.
Yeah.
And then really extending that. Did you go in with that idea that that's what you wanted to do? You wanted to become more epic and not do the 3-minute pop songs?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It was just, about sort of like taking it as far in that direction as possible. Obviously, like you said, there'd been threads before, things like Still Life on the first album, it was almost like lyrically and musically, it was just the next stage. It was like those sorts of songs extremified.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, that, there'd always been hints that we could do that. It was just a matter of whether we wanted to do it as a collection of songs that we put on an album,
Yeah.
Things like He's Dead, I mean, that's pretty out there. That was the B-side of the second single. Mm-hmm. And, it was just a matter of sort of like taking that and saying, no, this is going to be an album track rather than we're not going to bury this on the B-side,
What about in today when you're putting singles out, the idea of the B-side just isn't there anymore?
No,
and
there's not.
When I was going back through all the reissues, I realised that I was probably getting into about track 25 before it was a single. If I was my kind of unofficial Suede top 25,
right?
It would be stuff like To the Birds and Still Life and Breakdown and stuff like that, and By the Sea and stuff that was never a single.
Yeah, mine too. They're always my favourite songs.
Do you think that's that sense of bands having the space on B-sides to kind of do weird stuff or kind of to play around a bit more? Is that gone, do you think? Because
yeah, I do. I think that B-sides definitely had quite an important role. I mean, I'm not sure if, like you say, if bands have that space and that kind of like and that freedom to sort of like mess around with stuff, and I think that was a very important part of it, that we did experiment. We were able to do songs like Where the Pigs Don't Fly and He's Dead and The Big Time, these kind of odd things, and we would never have put them on an A-side at the time or on the album even, but it kind of gave us the freedom to try things out, yeah. Because you need to, everything about being in a band is about learning, and it's very much, when you first make an album, you're still not au fait with studio techniques and how the studio works. You're still, the way in which you kind of consume music is in the rehearsal room.
Looking at, I guess, the two eras of Suede, the Bernard years and the Richard years. Yeah. There was a lot of kind of Suede trying to find its feet initially until, I guess, late 91, 92. Mm. So what song was it that you think really clicked the first time round, that you thought, right, we're onto something here? And then, writing with Richard, what song do you think kind of went, that defined coming up or set you on that path?
Well, I think the first song that me and Bernard wrote was actually The Drowners, that kind of really, we wrote that in kind of 1991 or something like that, and that was at the point where no one was listening to us. Everyone had passed on us, and the whole of the music business had sort of like seen us but wasn't interested, quite rightly so. And we were sort of like completely allowed just to do our own thing at that point, because no one record companies weren't interested in us, so we were just writing away, writing songs like The Drowners and Pantomime Horse and all of these songs, and really taking it somewhere else as writers, but not being kind of like suffocated by too many expectations. Mm-hmm. And then I suppose with Richard, I think the first song that we wrote that I thought was really great was Film Star. Right. I remember going round to his little flat in Westbourne Grove and kind of like had this little idea in my head. I just tapped it out on my knees, Film Star, and he sort of like fitted this little guitar part around it. And that was the first song that I thought that we wrote together that really worked. Funny enough, you could actually... They're not completely dissimilar, are they, The Drowners and Film?
Well, I think in the review, the reissued review, I think that I mentioned that the demo version of Film Star starts very much like The Drowners. Yeah. The first couple of chords. Yeah. The drum beat and the chords, and it's almost like it's The Drowners.
Yeah, it is. And maybe we kind of like, when we eventually got in the studio, we kind of realised that and tried to take it somewhere else slightly.
We have some questions from the outside world via the medium of Twitter.
Before we do that, I forgot to do my non-traditional thing of our weird podcast, which is give everybody a gift.
Oh, right, what's this?
And you get to choose. I forgot about this. I've got them in my pocket. They're all right. I've got a choice of 4 sweets.
Oh, that's really nice.
I've got a Cadbury's cream egg, I've got a Freddo frog, I've got a finger fudge, and I've got a Kinder egg. So
can I have the Cadbury's cream egg?
You can.
I love Cadbury's cream egg. Thank you very much.
Because they go out now, don't they? I'm going to take the Freddo frog.
Are we allowed to eat them live on
You can if you want.
Sponsored by Freddo over.
sponsored by Cadbury's and Kinder. Fraser,
That's really
Throw
nice.
me the Kinder, I'll have that.
there you go. You can build a toy while
Kinder
we're...
Egg, yeah.
Do you think that kind of guests eating Cadbury's cream eggs is good radio?
It's certainly very sonically interesting.
I think,
Is it?
I
Yes.
think that the good
Okay.
people at Cadbury's are very fine. And
Are you on a private earner here from the
I
Cadbury's?
am, yes.
Oh, God. Questions from the world of Twitter. Well, take a bite of your cream egg now to give you some time to think. This is from Niven J1. Niven J1, who I suspect is actually pop writer John Niven, is it not? I think it is Niven J1. Anyway, he asks, Brett, did your bottom ever fully recover from all that microphone abuse as you spanked yourself with it?
You should have seen the bruises on my legs in 1992. It was kind of, I had bruises big as dinner plates all over my legs. Yeah, no, not quite, no.
OK. The CVH 2009 said, did you ever think Ricky Gervais was set for global stardom?
To be honest, no. But he was always a very witty person.
Yes.
It's kind of incredible what's happened for him. I'm kind of really proud and pleased for him.
Did you ever run into him on the
Yeah.
showbiz circuit, as it were?
Well, he came to a Suede show a few years ago, and he was lovely. So,
Should we
a
fill
few
in the,
years ago. That must have been a good while ago.
yeah, it was a. I can't remember when, but yeah, he did. Yeah.
should we fill in the background to that for
Yes.
for the non-nerds? What was it? It was Ulu, was that right? He was working there
He
in
used to-
bands or in the Ints committee.
He used to work. There was three guys that who used to manage us very, very early on, and he was one of them. But he was a bit of a silent partner. He wasn't that involved in managing Suede. So when people say, "Did Ricky Gervais used to manage you?" the answer is sort of yes and no.
Right.
You know, he wasn't sort of actively our manager doing stuff for us, but he was involved in the management company. He used to work with Simon, our drummer. He used to work in the ticket office in Ulu.
My God, so if you went and bought a ticket in Ulu in 1980, whatever,
You would have been served by Simon Gilbert and Ricky Gervais, yeah.
you should probably, if you still got that ticket, and you may well have it, because people hold on to their tickets, don't they? Then
Yeah.
you've probably got something that isn't really all that valuable. Well, at least it's a nice bit of memory.
You've got some DNA for a kind of new version of Suede filtered through the office, maybe.
Absolutely, a kind of cloned thing with Simon working in the office.
But Ricky used to be in this terrible band called Son of Bleeper.
Son of Bleeper.
Son of Bleeper, which is one of the worst names ever for a band. I mean, all the songs were all the songs that he later started taking the piss out of in the office. So
Free Love Highway.
Ricky's genius move in life was to stop taking himself seriously, because he used
Yeah.
to take himself very seriously.
Yeah. There's a message there for us all, I think. Another one from Twitter. Stuart Houghton asks, during one of the many arguments with his former guitarist, did Brett ever use the phrase, "I hate you, Butler"?
No.
No. Oh. Kittus asks, can you ask Brett if there are any lyrics he's written that he looks back on now and thinks was a bit ridiculous, with hindsight?
Well, people always... The stick people always beat me with is this song from Head Music called Savoir Faire, where the lyric is, she lives in a house, she's stupid as a mouse.
Yes.
And of course it's a dumb lyric, but that was the point.
Yeah.
That was the point. It was supposed to be a dumb lyric, you know, and it was kind of, people think that, oh, is that all he could come up with? But it's kind of, whatever. I can't be bothered to get involved in it.
Yeah.
Talking of lyrics.
Yeah, not that. I'm more. It bothers me more people's misinterpretation, which is kind of true of lots of things in my
Yeah.
career.
Talking about lyrics, will we ever figure out what was being kind of rapped, I guess, at the end of Stay Together? Because I
That's a
remember
good
at the time reading about it, and there was something in the Enemy or Melody Maker at the time that you insisted that nobody could be in the studio and you were going to do this late at night and nobody could hear it, and then you were
Yeah.
going to mix it into the track.
It was completely spontaneous. It was just this sort of, rant that I did at the end. You know,
Didn't you have to
and-
register it though with your publisher?
I don't know.
get
No, I
royalties
don't
off
think
that?
so, because it was just, It was inspired a bit by Patti Smith's song called Birdland,
Yeah.
where she just sort of it's kind of just spoken word sort of thing, and I kind of wanted to have it have that kind of feel.
So you just do it all in one take?
Yeah, it
With
was
no idea of what you were going to
exactly.
say?
It was just all spontaneous. Yeah.
SD Edition on the Twitter again says, Brett, can you please record another album as The Tears with Bernard Butler, last album criminally ignored? What are the chances of that happening?
There's your triple bill. You,
Yeah.
then the Tears, then Suede.
You
So
supporting
you've got
yourself,
your own
supporting
festival.
yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brett's-
Fest. What the chance? I don't know. I mean, not. I don't think the chances are great for that to happen. To be honest, you know. I mean, I've loved working with Bernard down the years, and
Yeah.
and I wouldn't ever count out working with him again, but possibly not in that. Not as the Tears, no.
What if things have gone the other way and you left Suede and then would you have ended up writing songs for Duffy?
Yeah, and producing people.
Oh, like the Libertines.
It could have been very different, couldn't it? History, yeah. It was Duffy's latest single about kind of sex on council estates.
Yes, with the pig.
I can picture that, yes, a nuclear pig, yes. Citizen Sane says, did you ever get around to having that homosexual experience?
God,
Not that one again.
let's it's going to be written on my gravestone, that one, isn't it?
It's a hell of a good line.
It is a good line, but I have to keep spending my whole life re-explaining it. I was actually talking about the way I approach songwriting,
Yes.
and it was taken very much out of context. But
I
it's
ha-
my fault for not realising how the media worked, and that's just,
I
just
heard
it.
a story about this, and I don't know if this is true or not, so you can put this rumour to bed or not.
Yes.
Was the journalist, was it an NME piece that came from, or a Melody Maker piece? Whoever it was, did the journalist say to you, would you describe yourself as a bisexual man who's never had a homosexual experience? And you went, yeah, probably. And then they flipped it to it was
I'll tell you
that
what it
you
was.
said it.
I originally made the quote in a now defunct publication called, was it called Lime Lizard?
Oh,
Bloody hell,
Lime
live
lizard,
lizards.
yeah.
Oh my god.
I was taking you back, right?
That's time tunnel.
Time Machine.
Yeah.
Lime Lizard, and then I was doing a thing with Melody Maker, and we were talking about sort of sexuality in music. It was kind of this round table thing with Simon Price, who was kind of hosting it, kind of for chairing it, and he brought up the quote in there, so it kind of like achieved a new, a kind of reference to something else I'd said, sort of thing. So, but the original piece was in Lime Lizard.
It did allow Simon, though, to come up with the killer quote, which was, I would describe myself as a bisexual man who's never had a heterosexual
That was
experience,
brilliant.
which was just an astonishing twist.
That was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, well, I mean, this is one of the great things about Suede at that time, was because rock music was so blokey and so dully masculine, and Suede gave those of us who are big girls' blouses a band of our own.
Well, that's
you can't
it's
fight
a
in the
pleasure.
pub. It's a band for you.
Yeah.
But it was also, it was Suede and the Manics, again, going back to the two gigs I went to in Cambridge. And then you toured with the Manics, didn't you?
Yep.
Right, the time, it was kind of just before Richie disappeared.
They came on. Yeah, they supported us in Europe in 1990, end of '94, October '94.
So that must have been quite an intense time, because it's all kind of fallen apart.
It was literally just before he disappeared. It was a couple of months before he disappeared. I mean, that was like one of the last tours he did.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely fantastic tour, but he was very, very withdrawn at the time. I didn't, I don't have. We didn't kind of. He was always doing something else at the time. I don't know where he was. We hung out with the other guys quite a lot, but I think he was somewhere else mentally.
It was weird that bands like Suede and the Manics were having top 10 hits at that time as well. There was a very weird image and lyrical subjects and stuff being brought into the top 40. And
The Manics are the only band from that. People always say, so do you ever see any of your old Britpop mates and things like this? And
Go down to
no,
Good Mixer
no,
and
no,
right
no,
up the
and
links
no
up.
again. Do you know what I mean? It's the answer to that, because there weren't any in the first place. But the Manics are actually the only band that I've ever kind of felt any kind of kinship with, in the sense that I think we were both of the bands were kind of like had a sense of us being kind of outsiders. We didn't feel part of the kind of party.
very literary bands as well, certainly in terms of the references, because there was something. It was like the Smiths as well. There was a life beyond the music and the lyrics, because there would be references to books and kind of British social realist films and things like that. And in a way, it was a kind of mini education. It was like a kind of open university course about, do you want to know about this kind of era of Britain and these authors? And I certainly learned a lot of stuff and started reading books and finding out about films through both of those bands as well.
Well, that's nice. That's always what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of create a bit of a world for people to dive into. I didn't just want it to be, buying a CD like you kind of like buy a T-shirt or something like that. I wanted people to really belong to something. I suppose I wanted a sense of sort of tribe with the band, a bit of a tribal sense.
I got the impression seeing the Albert Hall show and the O2 and the three-nighter with the albums, that some of these shows would be shows that really stuck out as possibly the most exciting show a certain person had seen. That it could be a real landmark thing in their life. What were those shows for you? What were the shows that really, when you were a kid, when you were going to see bands and you didn't have an awful lot of money and didn't have an awful lot of access to this, what were the ones that set it off in your head?
Well, not the things you'd think. I remember going to see the Cult down in Brighton in about 1982 or something like that, and just been absolutely blown away by Ian Astbury. I just thought he was an amazing performer. So people like that, it's not the first gig I went to was something like New Order, and it was great, but it didn't kind of like change my life, sort of thing. It was always about the occasional, and even kind of recently, it's often never the bands whose music I really, really like. It's just something about the performer, it's just something about the energy of the performer on the night. People like the girl from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. I think she's an amazing performer as well.
So when you actually go and see people because you like their performance rather than liking the music?
No, I'd kind of like just stumble upon them,
Yeah.
But sometimes it, works together, Saw the Foals at Brixton last year, and I thought that was absolutely amazing for a completely different... it wasn't about the performance, it was just something about the way they were a real band. They were just really playing together really beautifully, so...
Yeah.
Can you... It's based on friends of mine are session musicians, and they say it's really hard to go to gigs because it feels like to watch other people's gigs. They can't disengage because they're watching what's happening, so they're watching the sound desk or the lighting engineer, and they're deconstructing everything a bit too much. So it's kind of ruined in the same way that lots of film critics feel that they can't watch films properly because they're trying to analyse it. Do you find the same thing when you're watching bands?
No, never. Okay. I kind of just let the music sort of flood into me, really. I don't ever have that kind of like that sort of... No, I don't kind of have that kind of critical eye about it, no. No.
So, you're going to be on at Latitude?
Yes.
If
Word sponsored last year.
Word sponsored, yeah. The Word
Word and Cadbury's.
The Word presented by and if a 14-year-old kid wanders over the hill that's found their way into the festival, maybe with their mum and dad or maybe not, and they encounter Suede, what would you hope they'd be thinking?
I'd hope they'd be thinking, God, I've never seen anything like this before, and I'd really like to find out more about it. Of course. I think when Suede work well, it's a unique experience. It doesn't always work. It relies on a few factors. It relies on things like whether the flow of whether there's contact with the audience, things like that, quite sort of physical things.
Yes.
But if it goes off and if it works really well, then I think it can be quite an astonishing sort of experience for people. Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in for the podcast, Brett.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
We'll wave from the Word-sponsored field.
I need to go and wash my hands now because I'm covered in Cadbury's cream egg.
And that's a quote that will haunt you, like the another one.
Another one.
I'm covered in Cadbury's cream egg.
If you've been affected by any of the issues in this podcast, go to wordmagazine.co.uk or apply at your newsagent every month.